Good morning. So, talking to my wife last night, we talked about perception and perspective. And I thought that I'd start the day off with a discussion with you as well. This is horrible lighting. And photographers understand that when you light a subject, a person, from below, it gives an unnatural, ethereal, evil look. However, if you just take the light, the same light, and move it where the sun would be, anywhere, you get a much more natural look. But from below, and the further below the face, the worse it looks. Siri, turn on the sink light. So, that's kind of my basis for a discussion on perspective. I dabble in photography. I spend way too much money on photography equipment and don't take enough pictures. But I dabble in photography. Perspective also concerns the distance to things, how you approach things, the line of sight of things, what's hidden in things. So this changes the picture that you see, the perspective of what's behind me. House looks okay, but actually the house is a little bit of a mess right now, and all I have to do is move your perspective slightly, and you can see there's a shirt, my work shirt, just laying on the couch. Perspective. Think about perspective a lot lately. When you perceive something from a specific let's take another drink of coffee, Joe. When you perceive something from a perspective, that perspective is always unique to you. There may be someone standing next to you with a similar perspective, but it's similar. It's not the same. So, that carries on through life as well. I've worked hard my whole life. I've struggled financially my whole life. I am not a college-educated person. I am not well-to-do by our country standards. But if you back up and you look at the world as a whole, I'm wealthy. I have been, well, number one, I was very blessed, or I hit life's lottery, if you will. I was born in America. I was born where there was very much a very high standard of living. But I'm in this environment, so my perspective is not always backed up far enough for me to see and for me to be cognizant of how blessed my life is. That deserves another cup of coffee. I'm up early this morning, so not for any specific reason, I'm just awake. I worry about things. I worry about retirement. or the lack of retirement, my 401k, the lack of money in my 401k. What I seldom worry about is what's in the refrigerator. What I seldom worry about is, am I going to be hungry today? Am I going to go to bed with an empty stomach? Obviously not. Will there be coffee in the morning? There are people in the world that are worried about, am I going to get food tomorrow? Am I going to get food this week? We are blessed. It was pointed out to me once that our homeless people are fat. Well, some of them. That's true. But poor people are not usually struggling with weight issues on that end of the scale anyway. That's the country we live in. That's a perspective that we oftentimes forget. Perception. My perception, although comes from my perspective as human beings, as people who can, as entities who can think outside of our own existence. We're not cats. We're not dogs. We're not fish. We're not living on instinct alone. If we have the ability to learn about other individuals' perspective and learn about other people's perceptions. Oftentimes we don't. Our perspective and what we see, well, we make a decision as to whether that's right or wrong. And by golly, that's what we're going to stick with. That's where we're at. When things get contentious, when things get argumentative, I know in a debate team they do this. They make you argue both sides of an issue. That's important. That's a learning tool. That's trying to see something from another perspective. It is a difficult thing. It is a difficult ability to conquer. I have not yet. I oftentimes forget that there are other perspectives. And if I would take the time and learn and see the other perspective, what I see may have been enlightened and I may learn. And I oftentimes forget. I'm a truck driver. On the road, I also ride motorcycles occasionally. On the road, when you're in a truck, there is the potential for catastrophe in every moment. A truck, a regular truck, can weigh up to 80,000 pounds, 40 tons. That can kill a mass of people. At 60, 70 miles an hour, that's a rolling cannonball. There's no time to look at your phone. There's no time to not pay attention to exactly what's going on around you. My perception has got to be focused specifically on the task at hand. My perspective is I fear hurting other people. I see other people on the road. And this isn't a slight. This is something I have to be aware of in my occupation. I see other people on the road's perspective, and I have to try and kind of look forward from where they are to where they're going. Every person's an individual. The person in the Pontiac in front of me may consider a yellow light time to stop. I've got 80,000 pounds of mass that I have to stop. So I have to look at that Pontiac and the traffic light up ahead, which has been green for a long time. It's what we call a stale light. It's about to turn. Is that Pontiac preparing to stop? Is his or her foot hovered above the brake, ready to hit the brake hard? Is my following distance far enough to stop if they slam on their brakes? I have to be cognizant of their perspective. That carries over into life as well. And oftentimes, we forget other people have a different perspective than we do. I have many, many times in my life. My wife is one of the most intelligent people I know. Seldom does she bring up a topic where she's a topic of a deep discussion, where she's not trying to enlighten me and herself. Perspective. So, I've been following a guy on Facebook lately. He's very, very angry about President Trump being in office. I have been trying to figure out why he's so adamant that every single move the current president makes is wrong. It's almost at the point where he thinks that everything he does is evil. Except I think that the guy's an atheist. That doesn't preclude evilness. It's just I'm saying I don't think it's from a religious point of view. I think it's strictly a political point of view. And then I watched pieces of the State of the Union where the president addresses the full Congress. That was the idea that the left, that the Democrats, would not stand and applaud the perseverance of a cancer victim is beyond me. This was a planned observance of team sportsmanship. The quarterback at the front of the room giving the speech is in the opposition, so no matter what, we must stop him. I don't get it. How can you not? Look, I know, I understand deep in my heart that this is all for show. That child that beat cancer, I have no, what is the word? There's nothing in me that believes that President Trump was a part of that child's life. This child may have been brought to his attention. The struggles. This is today's coffee. I'm not going to do a commercial. And actually it's only half of today's coffee. I saw this sitting there. And I was thinking I might need another drink of coffee because there's a bit of a struggle going on. But the struggle that child went through, and the idea that this particular piece of showmanship that both the left and the right do, it was a bad look for the Democrats to not stand and applaud that child. It was a horrible look. It's a sad day when that's the case. I'm rambling. Perspective. It is a hard thing. We all perceive. We all see what we see. We have to learn to have perspective from each other. I'm sure the Democrats' perspective was we don't want to give Trump any edge. But in doing so, the perspective of the rest of the nation saw them refuse to give this child accolades for beating cancer. And for, at least from the child's point of view, wanting to enter into an honorable profession of law enforcement. That was a bad look. That was a horrible look. And trying not to give the president, I'm trying not to be disrespectful and call him Trump. He's the president. So, in trying not to give President Trump the edge, they gave him a huge edge. That was a horrible look. We all perceived that you sat there and you looked awful. There are times to stand and cheer the office of the president. That was one of those times. You missed it. I keep looking at the clock. Got a buddy who tells me my podcasts get too long. Vlogcast, videocast, show, rambling. I do that. It's a difficult. Someone else's perspective is hard to grasp, especially over something like Facebook. The animosity this individual I was talking about earlier feels about the president. I'd love to know why. Mostly I see the what he's doing wrong. What's wrong about what he's doing? Is there a why? Or is this strictly political? I'd love to know that perspective. I lost my perspective. I ran out of memory on the phone. So the video stopped. Fortunately, this morning I have been using the front-facing, I guess they call it, the front-facing camera on my phone because I was doing the perspective thing with my light. So, perception. Our perception can be changed. Hey, buddy. Oh, this is Russia. Our perception can be changed by other people's perspective if we let it. We always have our own perspective. It's a choice whether we see, acknowledge, and try to perceive someone else's perspective, no matter how similar or how different than our own. There is no place that's more obvious than in politics. Politics can be very divisive. to a community, to a family, to all walks of life. Or we can acknowledge that someone else may have a different perspective than we do. Another one is religion. I've looked into a lot of religions, trying to find truth. My truth is not the truth of the majority. My beliefs are not that of the majority. It is my perspective. It is what I have chosen to believe. The perspective that I have, not many people have. Most people are born into her faith. They're raised in that faith. And they depart this world still in that faith. Most people. A lot of people do change, convert, whatever you want to call it, become enlightened. Again, this is from your perspective or someone else's perspective. I guess it's time for me to clean out my folders on my phone. There's a lot of pictures I don't need to have anymore because my perspective has changed. Oh, there. That's another thing. We can choose to change our perspective so that we can perceive things from a different point of view. Just like the light. From below, I chose to bring the light up so that it had a more natural effect. Perspective. We can choose to change our perspective. I can choose to try and understand someone else's perspective. I can choose to change my own perspective. Trying to think of a good example of that. Got a buddy at work. Sometimes he gets very angry about the jobs that are assigned to us. Why the hell are they doing that? Well, from his perspective, he may be zigzagging back and forth across the area that he's in. He may be doubling back and getting a pickup and then going right back to where he started. And from his perspective, what a glorious waste of time this is. I could have done this while I was over there. But from the dispatcher's perspective, he's getting calls all day. He's having to switch drivers off of accounts and sending them to separate stops that wasn't planned. If a stop isn't planned, his perspective is everything has to be more fluid. So now I have to shift everybody from this side of town or area to this side, but I still have this stop over here, so I'm going to leave this guy over here. You pick up here, I'm bringing this guy back over. You get the point. Perspective. How do you change your own perspective so that you are perceiving things in a different fashion? Do you want to perceive things in a different fashion? From a different point of view, from a different perspective? Do I want? Maybe there's the issue. Maybe none of us want to change our point of view. Maybe we are so set that this is wrong, that's right, the end. Or are there absolutes? There are absolutes. I have to believe there are absolutes. Murder is wrong. By its own definition, murder is wrong. So, that's an absolute. The word murder, the action of murder, is wrong. I didn't say killing, I said murder. the taking of someone else's life, that's huge. That's killing, which is a wartime activity, and murder, and then there's just murder. And if you murder someone, not defending yourself, not defending someone else, that's just wrong. That's an absolute in my book. My perception on that will not change. If I walk over and I see someone murdering them, no matter from what side I see a person being murdered, I look at it. If I look at it from the left, from the right, from above, from below, murder's murder, and it's wrong. It's an absolute. There are absolutes. Then there are more fluid situations. Are we as a species, are we as human beings able, that's not the right word, are we willing to change our point of view, our perspective? I think that's the real issue with the division in politics today, and the division in America today, and the division in religion today. It's a lot more complicated than the surface might indicate. Perspective and point of view. So it's a deeper topic than perhaps a half a cup of coffee. A half a cup of coffee, that won't do it all. What we need here is a whole cup of coffee. Perspective. You got to remember to clean that. I'm up way too early for something this deep. The wife got me thinking about it last night, and I woke up at 4:30 with it still on my mind. Perception versus perspective. I don't think you can have them opposing each other. I don't think you can do verses. I think you have to do perception and perspective. Perception with perspective. Whose perception? Whose perspective? Such a simple topic to befuddle a simple mind like mine. Have I observed everyone's perspective that I've disagreed with enough? Trying to grow out my mustache so I can make a handlebar mustache, and I'm not used to the hair being this long. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I've never done that before. Never had a beard this long before. I keep getting told that I look like Santa Claus. I try to cooperate with the mothers with kids, but I may have to shave this beard. I shouldn't shave my beard completely off because from my wife's perspective, she says I look awful. She likes the beard. I'll keep the beard for a while. Summer's coming though. I may have to thin it out or something. I don't know. I'm being very contemplative this morning because I'm thinking about all of the issues in my life where I may have missed someone else's perspective. In recent history, I'm trying to think of those times. I think I generally do okay, but I'm sure And restart number 3, I forgot to turn off my alarm. I have my alarm set not super early. Let's call it 6:30. And that's just in case one glorious day that I get to sleep in. So I don't know how long this video is because my timer's gone off. I'm sure it's heading toward 45 minutes. which will upset one specific listener that I know of. But I'm going to send him the video anyway. I think we all need to seek each other's perspective before we fight someone else's point of view. Perhaps we should look at their perspective. Try and see things from where they're sitting, standing, working, whatever. Perspective. Can we perceive someone else's perspective? Not completely, but we can definitely be told about it. We can investigate it. We can check it out. I think we better call it a day. Or at least a podcast, vlogcast, videocast. Rambling. I'm sticking with rambling. Thanks for listening to Rambling with Joe. Go out today and have a good cup of coffee and persevere.